COVID's shadow over the governor's race. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. It has been 6 years since the worst days of the COVID pandemic when much of the world was shut down. Things have returned to normal, but the shadow of the pandemic looms over this year's Ohio governor's race. The Democratic nominee, former Health Director Amy Acton, became a household name as the face of the state's effort to control the spread of the coronavirus. She used that name ID and goodwill to launch her campaign. But a lot of Ohioans opposed the shutdowns she advocated and blame her for the economic losses and the lost learning in schools. Republican Vivek Ramaswamy accused her of canceling an election. But as a private businessman, his companies made millions of dollars developing or helping develop a COVID vaccine, and he pushed the idea of a COVID registry to separate the immune from the non-immune. Brian Rothenberg, to Amy Acton, should she lean into her COVID record, or she should just leave it out there and push it aside?
It's part of the record, but I think both of them have a problem here. First of all, what she did, the governor himself has said he was the one that made that decision. She did leave, but she left primarily because she couldn't stomach Larry Householder's legislation, which she thought was going to kill people. And she made a decision that was a medical decision that saved many lives. Now,
but should she dwell on that on the campaign trail for this race?
Well, I think if it keeps being brought up, I think she just needs to talk about what really happened, and that it is partially Mike DeWine, but it is partially, what had to be done. You had to make a difficult decision. Now, the Ramaswamy one, I don't understand what he was. You want to take people that have certain qualifications that they're safe and separate them. You're going to separate families. You're going to separate kids from their parents.
I think he was talking more like workplaces, trying to get people back to work.
It just wouldn't have been workable.
So how does Ramaswamy play this? Because let's look at this poll. This is a poll that Bowling Green State University did last month. It showed mixed results. When asked if Acton's COVID service made voters more or less likely to support her, 34% said more likely, 32% said less likely, and 26% said neither. So basically, one-third, one-third, one-third. It's a wash. So is this really going to be a factor in this race, Mike?
I truly do believe it will be, Mike, because most voters, moms and dads, grandmas, grandpas, are still remember. We've got kids that are still in schools today from when we had COVID. I have a son who's going to be a freshman next year that is still living through the ramifications of the school shutdowns and lockdowns and what have you. It's her defining moment. When you think of COVID in Ohio, you think of Amy Acton. You can think of Mike DeWine too, but he's not on the ballot. Amy Acton is, and she is synonymous with COVID, with the negatives of the COVID, the shutdown, the 6 feet apart, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, so on and so forth. All negatives, very little positives, right, in that. And that's the job of the Ramaswamy campaign and others that support him to remind him. You have to judge two people by their record and who you want to be the next CEO of Ohio.
But 65% of the people even during those worst days, supported her. It was wine with DeWine, with Amy Acton every day, empathetic voice, empathetic face, flatten the curve, Swiss cheese on top of each other. She was trying to save lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, she was. A lot of negative ramifications when we moved forward. Mm-hmm. We saw states like Florida say, enough of this nonsense. We're going to open up. We're getting our kids back in school. Mm-hmm. We're going to let little Johnny play baseball. And she kept saying, no, no, no. And then she took her ball, quit, and left. But look, the worst thing she did is she picked winners and losers. Walmart got to stay open, but every small business in Ohio had to stay closed. That is what voters are going to remember.
Well, I'm not sure that was completely her decision, because John Husted played a role in this too, Jesse, in COVID. He was there. He was the economic face of the COVID pandemic. Amy Acton handled the health. John Husted handled the economic. What was closed, what was open.
Yeah, I think you really saw them on almost like not opposing sides, but like different ends of the spectrum on the COVID-19 pandemic, with Mike DeWine making the decisions in the middle. So maybe Amy Acton is advocating for more like health response, John Husted advocating for more business forward response. And both of those were important to consider during the pandemic. But to your point, I think this is something that we're going to keep talking about because it is her main resume point as far as what she's going to be judged on going into the governor's race.
Brian, to the earlier point, in hindsight, can she say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have kept the schools closed as long as we did? Can she say that on the campaign trail without it blowing back in her face?
You know, I don't think she needs to at this point. I mean, I think that the polling shows that it's a divided public on this issue. And I think that what you're going to see is Ramaswamy trying to hang on to this because he's trying to hang on to his MAGA voters who are very disenchanted right now with the economy and many things like data centers. And I think this is his sort of way to try to keep his base together. But if you're fighting for your base, you're going to lose a lot of other people.
Mike, is he using his animosity towards Amy Acton to tap into that base who really does not like Amy Acton, did not like what she was doing at the time, to say, I'm with you, you should vote for me, even if you have other concerns about my candidacy, and stick with me?
I respectfully disagree with my colleague Brian on that point because we just had a primary a week ago. Vivek won all 88 counties, most of them by 70% or more. The base is with him. He does not need to capture the base today any more than Amy Acton needs to capture the liberal Democrat base. They have them. Now we're going to talk to the people, the moms and dads in Delaware County and collar counties of Franklin County and say, do you remember what it was like for that 2 years, 3 years, which didn't need to be 3 or even 4 years. It could have been 2, but Amy kept it dragging on and on. And I think it's responsibility. It's his responsibility.
She left within 6 months after COVID started.
But it's his responsibility as a candidate to remind voters of what she did when she had the authority to do her decision. Look, guys, the governor can say all he wants, but you look at the orders. You have her signature on the order saying, I'm closing down voting in 2020. Her signature, her order.
But if Mike DeWine didn't want her making that order, would she remain as health director?
She could have resigned then. If
No,
she
would he have fired her?
Well, he should have then. Look, that's the role of the governor. The governor has an auto pen in his office, and he does a lot of executive orders. This is her order. If they have a problem, the governor has the ability to get rid of her.
Jesse, we have spent now 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes, talking about COVID when Amy Acton wants to talk about affordability. That's her struggle, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see her out on the campaign trail, she's not leading with the COVID-19 pandemic, in part because of the conversation we've been having, in part because no one has like really warm and fuzzy feelings associated with the pandemic, regardless of whether you approve or disapprove of how she handled it. It's just like not a time we all look upon fondly. Yeah. And so, yeah, she's trying to focus on affordability issues. I think this is an election where that's going to be at the heart of what voters are concerned about, too.
Can she do that? How does she do that, Brian? How does she get the focus back on what she wants to talk about, which is the cost of living, high gas prices?
I think that's what people want to talk about. I really do think it's 6 years in the past, COVID. I think you're seeing, that third that you're talking, the great vast middle that hasn't decided about COVID one way or the other. They're not interested in it because they're interested in their pocketbook. They're interested in $7 ground beef. They're interested in $5 gasoline. And that is what is going to be on the ballot box this November, whether we want to talk about it or not. We as pundits can poll all we want, but your wallet is what is going to drive you.
So does Ramaswamy run the risk of not talking about the economy and affordability and what he's going to do about it if he keeps focusing on COVID?
Great question. I think he's going to have to do both. I have been to many speeches with Vivek speaking where he does lean in on affordability. Look, it's an issue. And Brian's absolutely right. People vote their pocketbook. At the end of the day, they don't care who's in office. What can I afford groceries? Groceries are expensive right now. Gas is expensive right now. Let's wait. The election isn't today. It's going to be in November. Hopefully prices come down for my party's sake, right? Because it's a midterm election. I get it, Brian. Okay, there's not enough spin in the room that I can give to know what's coming for Republicans if we don't get affordability under control.
All right. The future of Ohio's near universal private school voucher program is in the hands of the courts. This week, a state appeals court heard arguments for and against the state's Ed Choice program. At first, the system only benefited low-income students in poorly performing schools, but it has expanded so that nearly any student, regardless of income, attending any public school can qualify. It's popular. It costs the state more than $1 billion a year. Opponents of the vouchers argue that money could go and should go to public schools. Supporters argue public schools are funded properly and the vouchers are paid for with other state funds. Jesse Ballman, you were at the hearing this week where this was argued. Any indication? The 3 judges are Democrats, but any indication of where they were leaning?
Yeah, I mean, obviously judges can make any sort of decision, but based off of the questions that they were asking, they seemed inclined to find issues with the voucher program. Basically, at the heart of this is the Ohio Constitution guarantees a common system of schools and has some language about, religious sects not having control over that money or process and so forth. And so the question is this voucher program, which gives students money or families money to go to private schools, in violation of that? The initial court said, yes, this is unconstitutional. We're now in this middle step, but eventually this is going to end up before the Ohio Supreme Court, where the balance is 6 Republicans, 1 Democrat.
That clause that Jesse mentioned says the General Assembly will secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state. We've heard that over and over and over again. But no religious or other sect or sects shall ever have any exclusive right to or control of any part of the school funds of the state. So if you're giving private school, publicly funded vouchers to a Catholic school, a religious school, doesn't that violate the Constitution, Mike?
No, here's the difference, and this is what the state's hanging their hat on, and I think correctly so, as a 26-year practicing attorney. The state of Ohio is not giving public schools any money. They're giving money to the students, to the parents. You go where you want to go. You want to go to St. Charles? Go to St. Charles. Here's your voucher. You want to go to a STEM school? You want to go to a charter school that is non-denominational or doesn't have anything to do with religion? You can go there. The money follows the child. And that's the state's argument, and that's what's ultimately going to prevail. They did not write this legislation for universal school choice to say, hey, get into a Christian school, get into a Muslim school, get into a Jewish school. It's go where you want. If your school is failing, go. Go somewhere else. Get out of a broken system so you have the right to lead a God-given purpose life. Look, these black kids that are trapped in Columbus Public School have a way out right now. That's a good thing. We should celebrate that.
But they've had that for a long time. The argument is, Brian, that the universality of it, that higher income students can go for any reason.
Well, first of all, I do have to say they're not all black children in the Columbus Public School District. Let's establish that. Secondly, if in fact that is the case, the Constitution says you can go where you want to go. You say you can choose based on where the money goes. Well, if I apply to go to a Catholic school and they say, no, you can't, we have selective admissions, you can't go there. If I'm in a rural county and there aren't charter schools around, I can't go there. It isn't a system of common education. It isn't a fair system. And secondly, we play this cat and mouse game. Well, we're going to take $1 billion here. It's going to go with the student, but yet, some students in public schools, get, like Richmond Heights, $1,250 per student. But then you look at other places and they're getting, $8,000 to go to a private Catholic school that their parents were already able to afford. But we just decided that we're going to give them that money anyways.
So this would, if it does get to the state Supreme Court, Jesse, that's Republican dominated. You have to figure that the chances of the voucher program being upheld are pretty strong.
Yeah, I think that's possible. You did hear some of the arguments this week that are almost projecting forward to that Ohio Supreme Court. One of the attorneys for the public school districts was saying, we're making an originalist argument. We're sticking to the Ohio Constitution. This is what people thought the language meant at the time when it was written, which is traditionally more a conservative, originalist thought process on the court. So we'll see.
How's the program doing? Any evidence that it's improving education for these kids?
How would you know?
Well, yeah, I think it would be hard to know. I agree with Brian on that. But if you ask parents whose kids are not going to a failing public school right now, they're saying it's going great. Look, there's millions of people that live in Ohio, right? 11.9 million. We can't have any idea how it overall is doing. But if there's groups of kids that are no longer in failing schools and they can go to school in a safe environment, that's a win. It's a win for all of us.
Let's be honest about this, though. We do not put the same standards on charter schools and on these private schools. We do not have the same audits. We do not watch the money the same way. We have had numerous examples of problems with the charter schools and what public money has gone to and what it's wasted on. We don't know because we don't try to know. We don't try to know.
In the private, we don't try to know. What are their test scores that we could measure? The private schools, do we have the same thing?
Yeah, sure. Look, charter schools are public schools, and you can. We have access to that information. We've changed the laws in Ohio to have more accountability. But I'll tell you what, if you're going to charge whatever your tuition is, and you're a failing private school, you're not going to have a lot of customers at the end of the day. These schools are doing great things. Look at the sales.
But since
Catholic
the expansion,
schools.
Mike, I think there's been a lot of studies that have shown and a lot of data come out that at first, that was the goal. If you were in a failing school, if you were low income, you could get out. You could go to the local Catholic school. But since the expansion, a lot of folks in the suburbs are going to private schools for affluent students and using the vouchers to do that, right, Jesse?
They're capped at $500, Mike. If you're well, however you want to define wealth, there's income limits, right? So I think most families that are sending their kids to St. Charles currently or any of the Catholic schools, they get $500. Okay, we're not talking about $5, $10, $15, $20,000. We're talking about $500 of their tax dollars that they never got in the past. So it's not going to be a make or break.
How long is this going to take to get through the courts, Jesse? Any idea?
I think it'll be, weeks, if not months, to get a decision from this appeals court, and then it could be like another year before we hit the Ohio Supreme Court. Another issue that did come up that I thought was interesting was the question of whether, if we took $1 billion away from these private school vouchers, would that necessarily be spent on public schools versus, say, an income tax cut or a Brown stadium or some other thing that lawmakers might be interested in? So that'll be another one to watch in that appeals court decision.
All right. Ohio soon will have a new chief law enforcement officer. Governor DeWine this week appointed Andy Wilson as Ohio Attorney General, taking over for Dave Yost, who will soon resign in a couple of weeks. Wilson has served as the director of the Department of Public Safety. He's a career-long prosecutor. He played a key role in the prosecution of George Wagner IV, who was convicted for his role in the Pike County massacre that killed 7 members of one family. Jesse, you followed that case pretty closely. Did you run across Mr. Wilson, and what does he bring to the office?
Yeah, I mean, my colleagues and I did. I think he was well thought of for how he handled that case. He's also been someone who's been in Governor DeWine's kind of sphere of influence for quite some time now at the Attorney General's office, public safety, a person who he's really looked to when he's needed someone to take on a task. I was thinking about school bus safety was like another issue that he tackled. And so when we were thinking about who was going to replace Attorney General Dave Yost, is it going to be, a musical chairs of public officials, or are we going to go with someone who Mike DeWine, knows pretty well and trusts to be a caretaker for these final months?
Mike DeWine chose the safe path. Mike, that's very surprising.
It's shocking, right? No, it's a great pick. The law and order guy. Look, Andy, as you can see, he goes a million miles a minute, want to do the right thing for the right people. But guys, keep in mind, it's going to be a fascinating 7.5 months because he is going to be soon the constitutionally elected independent Attorney General for the state of Ohio. And he's going to have to then, balance that with the fact that there's no election or re-election for him. There's a time limit. The hourglass the sand is going. So, how hard charging will he go with his own Andy Wilson agenda versus knowing that there's going to be a hard stop come early January 2027. So, and then the independence of being because he is the lawyer for the governor, but he does make an independent decision. So again, we're political nerds. We're going to follow this stuff closely than most other people.
My guess is, Brian, he's not going to go out on too far a limb.
Probably not. I mean, Carol Rogers did this 18 years ago. Remember, she had been at the law school when Mark Dan resigned. I think that, he'll be a caretaker. There may be some big cases that he's got to deal with, and there may be, my advice, if I gave advice to him, would be pick 1 or 2 things that you really want to work on and have some fun with the job because you're the chief law enforcement officer of a great state.
First Energy executives, that trial ended in a mistrial. Jesse, that case is still pending. The charges are still there. Does he pursue that? Did he talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the highest profile cases that is still pending that he's going to have to work on. Today, Dave Yost said that he expects the new Attorney General to follow up on that case and retry it. So I think our expectation is that he will retry it. The question is, will we have the same witnesses, et cetera? Will he take a slightly different approach? He'll probably lean on the people who are trying the case.
In time-wise, it might take longer than 7 months for that to get to trial, which in that case would be the new Attorney General who would take it over anyway.
I think it's set for September this fall, so we will see. Things can always get continued in court.
There was some speculation, Mike, that the governor might nominate Keith Faber, who is running for Attorney General as auditor, but that would have caused some problems. I didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah, I think it would have turned off a lot of the voting public, both Republican and Democrat, conservative liberals, because there's an election and we elect our office. We don't want to appoint people. And I think Keith, to his credit, pushed back and said, no, I've got a job to do that the voters elected me to do. And I'm in the middle of this Medicaid issue right now. I wouldn't want the appointment if the governor offered it to me because I want to win the old-fashioned way, go in front of the voters and hopefully earn their vote, which I believe he will. So I'm glad the governor didn't even float that out there as a musical chairs thing, and I'm glad that Keith Faber did the right thing, saying, hey, if asked, I don't want it.
All right. There have been several new developments in the Richard Strauss scandal at Ohio State. Strauss is the doctor who sexually abused scores of OSU athletes in the 1980s and 90s. Strauss victims accuse Ohio State of covering up the abuse for years. 30 former OSU football players have now come forward to join the lawsuit against OSU. The Dispatch and WCMH report that former OSU athletic director Andy Geiger, in a deposition, said that former wrestling coach and current Congressman Jim Jordan likely knew about the abuse. Jordan has denied that. And the outgoing Attorney General, Dave Yost, has moved to dismiss claims by 77 plaintiffs because the abuse happened too long ago, according to statutes. Mike Konadakis, this case is widening. Is there are you surprised that OSU hasn't seriously tried to settle this and get it out of the way?
You know, nothing surprises me with the people that run Ohio State anymore. You know, this is gut-wrenching and sick. I mean, these young college boys, young men, were raped, were sodomized, had horrible things happen to them for years and years, some multiple times. And you had the leadership at the university at that time turn a blind eye, whatever the case may be. And here we are going forward. At some point, the leadership of Ohio State has to sit down and say enough. And get their arms around this, and you can't unwind the clock. We can't take away what happened, unfortunately, but you can compensate the victims of this crime, every single one of them.
Now, OSU has settled 117 of these cases, $61 million right now. But if you look at Michigan State, they settled their cases, the Larry Nassar case, the gymnastics coach, for $500 million. Michigan settled its case with its similar case for $490 million. $61 million is a long way from $500 million. Is that what this is, Brian? They don't want to pay $500 million to settle it?
I believe so. But, you know, I think those universities just basically, because I was up there at the time some of these things happened, they realized we have to take responsibility for this and we have to move beyond it. And instead, this has been a long, painful process. I will say one other thing that has come out through this that isn't talked about a lot because, we're more focused on the damage that was done to folks. But it says a lot about our society that at least people can now admit, if you were a football player or the former fire chief who announced this happened to him in high school from the same doctor. What does it say about us as a society that they couldn't come forward until now?
Yeah.
And what can we do in the future after this settlement to make sure that men can actually come forward when things like this happen?
Jesse, new president at Ohio State, you never know with a new president. It's ultimately up to the president and the board of trustees, not just the president alone. But do you see, it seems to be getting wider and wider, Les Wexner's been deposed or going to be deposed, Andy Geiger was deposed, Jim Jordan was deposed, Gordon Gee, the former president, is going to be deposed if he hasn't been already. It's spiraling, it's snowballing.
Right. I mean, just from even just like university perspective, you would think you'd want to get out in front of this, or it seems like this is just the drip, 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 and it keeps on coming, and there's more and more and more coming out. And this isn't the only problem Ohio State's had from like a very PR perspective, if not like even greater recently. And so, I mean, to the extent that you can solve the problem, that would be easier.
Brian, I mean, $500 million is a lot of money. Michigan and Michigan State both paid that out. Did it cripple those universities? They were able to figure it out how to pay for it, right?
They seem to be doing fine. They do seem to be doing fine. And, you know, the one thing that we haven't talked about is Jim Jordan. I mean, now the person that was his boss, the wrestling coach, has indicated that he thought there's no way he wouldn't have known. Now we have Andy Geiger, the athletic director at the time, saying it. You know, at some point, just level up on this. This is going to catch up with you.
How long does this OSU hold out, do you think, Mike?
I don't know. It should have been over years ago. You know, I've had some interactions with it being a member of the state medical board and not very positive dealing with Ohio State, but they need to, I'm going to measure my words here, they need to do the right thing now, not later, regardless of the final dollar. They got to do the right thing now.
They have argued that they have settled with all these folks and $61 million and offered counseling and things like that, but these other folks, many, many more are still out there. Anyway, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Brian Rothenberg, you're up first.
Hey, you know, this is for parents out there. I've talked to a prominent fire chief around these electric scooters, these electric bicycles. Make sure your kids are wearing helmets. accidents are way up this year, like 3 times more than in previous years. So real danger right now.
Slow down a little bit too, maybe, perhaps. Mike.
Data centers still in the news. Shocking. The legislature did the right thing this week. They're trying to come up with some solutions to not maybe fix the problem, but at least start addressing it. But it's still, at the end of the day, a local issue. Mike, you had the city of Cleveland just reject a data center, believe it or not, just this week, and there's more moratoriums coming. At some point, the voters, the electorate, are going to have to tell the legislature and others, this is what we want and what we don't want.
All right, Jesse.
My colleague Sheridan Hendricks did a deep dive into the people behind Brutus, the mascot at Ohio State, including an inside look into why he X'd out the M during that Michigan game.
He just doesn't like M's, right? Anyway, I predict that, because of affordability being a huge issue in the campaign, and right now Republicans are on the wrong side of that because they're in office and gas prices are going up, that this fraud will be their new banner that they wave. Investigating fraud and rooting out fraud in Medicaid and wherever else, daycare centers, wherever, will be their message going forward in the next 6 months. Does it counteract the rising gas prices? We shall see. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. A reminder to check us out on YouTube, the new WOSU News YouTube page. There you can see and share every episode. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Go to YouTube and search WOSU News. You can also watch us on demand at WOSU.org and on the PBS app. For our crew and our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.